very excited to have new friend and guest Phil Whealy on the call. Welcome, Phil.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Now, did I say your last name right?
You did. Whealy, it is.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. I know I've been saying it wrong up till now, so I appreciate the correction before we came on camera.
No problem.
So let me do a quick introduction for those that may not know you, Phil. You're an ex-London lawyer. You've been a serial entrepreneur for over 17 years, both TV, film, branding, event management, as well as energy, telephone, broadband, and real estate companies. And now you're involved heavily into tech. And you've been doing business and leadership consulting for 12 plus years. And some of your passions are organizational alignment, strategic goal attainment, leadership development, and you're a pianist and composer. And I'm always careful when I say that word pianist. I need to really enunciate that one.
You do, absolutely. But yeah, all of that list of misdemeanors is in fact true. And I'm a happily escaped London lawyer, I should say, no longer a lawyer.
In reform.
In proper full rehab. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, give us a bit of this founder story. How do you go from pursuing a law career to being an entrepreneur and getting involved in tech and, this passion for psychology and entrepreneurism with, I know this other component that is core to you, which is your faith and spiritual base?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I was one of those teenagers who didn't really entirely know what he wanted to be. I was actually, if anything, I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a professional musician. And I had a place in Yehudi Menuhin's School of Music in London when I was 12, 13. But my parents didn't want me to do that and go into the so-called flaky world of music. Maybe they were right and maybe they were wrong. I don't know. But I do know that had I done that, I possibly wouldn't have learned the disciplines and had the opportunity to make some of the great mistakes and learning episodes that I've had in my life. So I don't know. So I went into law. And qualified in London, and then practiced there for many years. Actually, in and out of London, I practiced out of town for a little while, and then went back into London. 3 hours commuting a day, round trip, 10, 12 hours in the office, pretty intense. Plus, I've always been super active. I then had a young family. Beginning to grow, and things were becoming really sort of burning candles at both ends. So I decided that actually that was probably insanity and was going to kill me before I was 30. So I decided to get out of that and embrace some of my passions. So I should just jump back into the law. By the end of my career in law, I had hyper specialized as a medical lawyer. So I was working, and I've been doing this increasingly for many, many years as a lawyer. My interest in medicine, the human body, physiology, and psychology really drove that for me. And I spent some years in and out of operating rooms, watching surgeries. I did some post-mortems at Westminster Mortuary in London, and just really to understand more about the human body, which I'm fascinated by. And of course, when you're a medical lawyer, you end up working with some of the world's leading experts in medicine, psychology, psychiatry, physiology, anatomy, everything else, and all of the disciplines, obstetrics, oncology, etc. And what that did for me is it gave me an understanding, I think, of the human body, but also human behavior. And that really, really, I think, set me on a path to truly understand human behavior as best as I could, if anybody ever can. And what I discovered is that human behavior is in the main incredibly predictable, and hasn't changed in thousands and thousands of years, and will not ever change, because fundamentally human beings are human beings. And so this really then spurred me on to explore human behavior and human psychology in all sorts of ways. And one of those ways was storytelling and the engagement of the human mind and emotions. Mm-hmm. So after I left law, I set up a TV production company, TV and film production company. And I was also working for a large charity doing all of their TV production work. So what I did is I went to the States. I trained intensively in television production, post-production, editing, and all of these areas, lighting, camera work, everything else. Very, very intense training. And then set about building. And I'd been doing this as a hobby, so it wasn't as strange as it sounds. Right. For many, many years. I operated my first broadcast camera at an event when I was 18. So this had been a bit of a passion of mine. So I then got into, how do you tell stories? How do you engage people visually, or with audio, or with music? And of course, all my music was carrying on through this. I was competing in my teens in national piano competitions, classical competitions, but was also learning everything from, some boogie woogie, blues and country and, black gospel and all that great stuff. And so I was really developing all of that sort of side. So in the TV production world, and I began to make music videos, began to make documentaries traveling the world. And I soon discovered that I was actually doing more hours away from home than I had been as a lawyer, which really wasn't the idea. As glamorous as it sounds, it really wasn't the ideal. So just before the crash in 2008, I got out of that world completely. Of course, I foresaw the downfall of Lehman's, naturally, and got out just in time, because I was also doing event management by that stage, and Wembley Conference Centre every year in London, and all sorts of things, brand awareness pieces, product marketing for pharmaceuticals and dental practices and all sorts of things. And of course, that market hit rock bottom at that point. And then it was a case of, okay, right, I've done all this. I'm really interested in people, behavior, business, why people fail in life, why they succeed in life. I've been studying this for many years, and I began to really intensively start to impart some of the things I'd learned to other business owners and entrepreneurs, even as we then started our own businesses. So that's my wife and I. And unusually, we've been able to work together without killing each other for 12 years now, and just had our 30th wedding anniversary. So went into several different business ventures. One of those was energy, telephony, and broadband. Again, essential services, as we've now discovered. And people can't do without their phones, same level as oxygen, apparently, and their internet connections. And how right that was. So that was a very fortuitous thing. I say fortuitous, but I do believe there is a God, and I do believe that all the way through this, I've been led in this pathway of training, discipline, character development, mistakes, learning, humility, and all of that good stuff. And we then started another 2 companies in real estate, one outside London and one solely in London, focusing on the high-end property markets. So we provide legal grade, high definition video evidence of condition, and we also do chattels valuations, antique valuations, and all this sort of thing, fine art and rare collections and that sort of thing. So developed that. Again, just always had an interest in real estate. So thought, well, there's a huge gap in this market. It's done badly at the moment. Let's document things better. I was a lawyer. I know about legal things. I know about evidence, and I know about TV. So I brought those together. As always, find the hole, fill the hole, meet the need. Made lots of great mistakes in there, developing products too far before asking the market some questions or some more questions. So really, really good learning experiences there in terms of entrepreneurship and everything else, and how to scale a business. And then, critically, moving to Canada in 2018 to forcing ourselves to make ourselves redundant as far as we can from our businesses. So we exited one of those businesses at the end of 18, and the other two are still running. We're still founder owners, but we've been able to literally move 6,000 miles away and have those tick over beautifully whilst we're not there running around solving problems and fighting fires, which has been a revelation, I have to say. And then, of course, I was consulting here in Canada, and I came across Goal Management, the company of which I'm now the CEO, and this company really caught my attention. So that's sort of my quick potted history.
Well, I love it. There's a lot in that, but it gives us an indication of where you go from lawyer to entrepreneur to a move to Canada, and with the current company, which got my attention when Jason Kakasi introduced us, and originally did it because of my connection to management consulting and, the biz dev stuff. But he also, as you both know, my PhD research is in goal setting theory and kind of performance. So there was an alignment on that behavior performance with a goal planning software. So, the minute I heard about it, obviously I was interested, and then seeing the people behind it, like yourself and Jay, but also, the chairman of your board, who's another tech company and done quite well in the medical field.
Yes.
And I don't want to mention his name because I don't know if he wants that known, but, he's one of the success stories, as we know, here in Canada in terms of tech and
absolutely
how to do it. So knowing that all of these people are behind it, have been in similar SaaS companies, built and sold, but then what it does for organizations is phenomenal. And that sort of diligence and inquisitive nature of law, the profession, I can see, and I saw how the interest when you're doing it and how you work, it's, the diligence and the investigative nature is a transferable skill. And the fact that lawyers work their butt off and entrepreneurs work their butt off. People look at, the successful side, years down the road when you can exit a bit and it's not tied to you operationally like you have with the two London companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
You also mentioned kind of the faith side. I want to come to that because I haven't talked about this on the podcast ever before, and I'm always cautious in a business setting because I've always been worried that I wouldn't want to offend anyone, but we've talked, and it's a critical part of my own life and decision making and that. And how does your faith play in to business?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question.
So we're going to go down an uncomfortable hole, but I think this is important because everyone has values and beliefs, and having, a faith-based background, comes with values and a belief system.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you go to the most fundamental level, I think knowing that there is a maker, a creator, someone to whom we are accountable ultimately, informs literally everything I do in business. Mm-hmm. So, it might be easy to think, well, character is what people see. But the truth is, character is what people don't see. Character is what you are when no one's looking. And if you have a sense of ultimate accountability, which I do, then that informs everything I do when no one's looking in business. So, any sense of cutting corners or any sense of, not failing to examine my motivation on an issue or in a relationship or with my staff, my team, that simply is not an option because I'm accountable and I will give account. And so to me, that's a wonderful thing because it's liberating. And some people say, oh, that sounds terrible. You're not free to do whatever you want. Well, truth is, we've seen what happens when people believe that they're entirely free to do whatever they want. We see North America going up in smoke in places. People just taking matters into their own hands or just seeing their own point of view, not seeing the bigger picture, harming other people, hurting other people, justifying that.
And themselves in the process.
And themselves. And to me, I think that business can become fully business because I believe that the core values of my faith demand excellence. The core values of my faith demand discipline, demand diligence, demand consistency, and demand actually love and care as well. Because so often we see marketing, which is so evidently non-authentic. And we say, well, they're using a form of words. We care about you, but it's a classic bait and switch. And that it's simply a manipulation. So, we have to examine that in business, I think. I think the true essence of great business is actually caring for your customer. I think that's absolutely critical. Not saying that you care because it's great marketing, but actually caring.
Absolutely.
Can we make their lives better?
It's being exposed and people are hypersensitive. I think they can sense insincerity like no time in history, and our accountability is way higher with, you want to talk transparency. I mean, social media and the fact that everyone's carrying a camera and access to the internet almost all the time, the idea of, people don't see character. It was an interesting statement, but I go back to what you're saying about, your interest in human behavior. What we see is human behaviors, but character is that inner beingness, our essence and core. And where does that come from for us? And part of it's, nature, nurture. There's a bit of both. There's a neurobiology that we all have and inherit, but there's also the environment. And it's interesting you brought up that love and compassion and caring. I mean, I've studied the major faith-based religions of the world, and there's a difference between religion and faith too. But if we think of institution of faith-based institutions, the major ones, all of them share love and caring as core values and beliefs, which, are transferable to business. And I think that people think, there's a danger in, quote, church and state or temple and state, whatever it is for the individual coming together. But, that's denying reality in a lot of cases. And, there's, as much as there's legal code, a lot of that came from moral code that was based out of different faith-based religions when you go around the world. So you can't separate it because it's actually systematized at this point, and you would then be denying people's actual values and character. But it's interesting, that connection. I like that you brought that together. Now, I want to come back to the goal management software side of the business. And now I know that it's based off of the OKR framework that John Doerr has made famous. Maybe you can tell listeners who's John Doerr, and why should we listen to this guy, and what is OKRs and how does that fit with goal management software?
Absolutely, yeah. OKRs stands for Objectives and Key Results, and is probably, I would say now, generally recognized as best practice goal setting methodology around the world. Last 4 or 5 years, it has begun to increase in uptake, understanding, particularly in the corporate world, but also the not-for-profit world as well. And it was really, it was created way back in the 70s at Intel. And that's where John Doerr was working as a young engineer.
Under the great Andy Grove.
Oh my goodness, Andy Grove, legend. No manager like him. Incredible mind, incredible ability to understand, again, human behavior and human motivation and engagement.
I heard him speak once, and it was one of the most powerful speeches I've ever heard. Yeah. And that story, the Intel story, Only the Paranoid Survive, when that book came out, was paradigm shifting for me, because here's a company that had like 99 or 98% market share. And I remember when I first read it, it was in the middle of the .com craze. And here's a guy that's riding that wave, and his philosophy is only the paranoid survive. And it's not going with a fear base, but it's, you need to be paying attention to what's in the rearview mirror, because if you're on the top, and you know, when I talk with world champions, the toughest thing of being a world champion, you know, people think it's getting there. It's keeping the motivation once you're there and staying and retiring a champion. That doesn't happen too often.
Absolutely. Yeah, that human inertia creeps in so easily for all of us. Absolutely. And so John Doerr took this incredible framework with him, and he kept it in his head for a couple of decades. And then, of course, he got into the VC world, and he's now chair of Kleiner Perkins, of course, one of the major investment companies in the world. But in 98, I think it was, he brought the OKR concept to a 30-person Google. And he sat down with Sergey, and he said, "Hey, I've got to show you this. This could be revolutionary for you guys." And they went, "Okay." So he pitched this to them, and they said, "Yeah, we like it. Let's give it a go." And ever since then, Google has credited the OKR framework and methodology to being critical to its growth, scaling, and success. And of course, there are multiple other companies that use it. Spotify and Uber and Amazon and
Bill and Melinda
the Gates Foundation. Bono used it for his incredible work. And so this is being used now by large and small organizations. It's completely scalable. It's very simple, and it allows people to finally visualize the connection between high-level strategic objectives and the day-to-day work. And that is a challenge for all of us, actually. We get busy, we get swamped, we get overloaded with data. Firefighting, it's an important versus urgent, usual problem. Many frameworks have addressed this in various levels of success. But the OKR framework recognizes all of that great stuff. It looks at SMART. It looks at, all of the old systems that have risen up over the years, and it really brings together the best of those methodologies and creates a beautiful transparency across an organization and an alignment. So everybody's actually cascading down from or across from what matters most to the organization.
John's book, for those, they might be familiar with the book if they haven't heard of OKRs, Measure What Matters.
Absolutely.
This is his book, and it's a fantastic book.
Phenomenal. And it gives this history actually very beautifully, but also explains the OKR framework and why it really does work. And I think that Kleiner Perkins now, I think this is true, that they actually won't invest unless their investees actually incorporate the goal setting framework properly, because they want their return and they will have it. So it's a wonderful framework, but equally it's quite fluid, and we're not so wedded to OKRs on our platform that you couldn't use other frameworks in there. But I think as a core ideology, I haven't found a better one in my years of coaching and working with lead teams. It's phenomenal.
Right. And, I know Jim Collins talks about BHAGs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ray Dalio in Principles talks about both BHAGs and OKRs, and they're synonymous. One of the previous guests was actually Gary Latham, who's co-founder of Goal Setting Theory. Mm-hmm. So for those that haven't seen it, go back and check out Gary Latham's talk on Goal Setting Theory. He's one of the guys that obviously Andy Grove and John would be very well aware of and talk about, because that foundation. Craig Pinder, who's a professor emeritus from the University of Victoria, says that goal setting theory is arguably the most widely held, entrenched organizational behavior theory that exists. And everyone's familiar with it, whether consciously or not. We're all involved in goal setting.
Yes.
And having a strong framework that drives, both bottom up as well as top down, and that alignment, this is where the software's doing stuff that's different. Now, what your company's done different than some of the other software companies out there and, goal management or OKR frameworks is you're focused on the consulting industry as a core market. You have all the end users, but one of the issue with a lot of software is ongoing support and resources for implementation, support, and coaching through it for it to last. I mean, we've all bought, programs or software that we started and it became a bit of a pain in the butt, so we didn't stay with it. So having something with it. Well, tell us why you chose the management consulting market and what's the potential in that market? Are you limiting yourselves, or is there a strategic reason why goal management software is going down that road?
Oh, absolutely. One often starts with one's entrepreneurial hypotheses from one's own experience. Of course, you can't stay there because that's anecdotal. And it has to be tested relentlessly. But as a consultant, I was encountering the same problems over and over and over again. So there's two sets of problems. One is the end user and one is the consultant. So that they each have their own particular problems which recur. And they often overlap as well. So one of the key issues is, it's all very well to set goals, but how do you track progress? How do you record progress in a complex structure? How do you do that? Well, we see spreadsheets, very complex spreadsheets, multiple tabbed spreadsheets. Problem with spreadsheets is I can break a spreadsheet with the best of them. To get aggregation across sheets, it's quite hard. You can do it, but it's complex. It's not really designed for that.
Multinational corps, like huge corps that are international, like Bill and Melinda Gates or Google. I mean, you couldn't do that with a spreadsheet.
No. Well, you'd be amazed how many, well, you wouldn't because but people would be amazed how many still try. And we've seen some very impressive spreadsheets over the years. And I go, wow, I don't know how to work that spreadsheet, but somebody I hope does. So that's one issue, but also there's some great project management software out there as well, which is purely designed to help that task layer, that sort of daily practical layer to operate better. Fantastic. But they're not connecting to strategy. They're not creating an absolute rolled up connection to that ultimate attainment. Where's the ultimate needle? And where do we want that needle to end up on the things that really matter?
The longer term goals versus a short term task based.
That's right. So those BHAGs and everything else, that is what objectives really are. Those are the things that, as Warren Buffett says, the 25-5 rule, write down the 25 things that you absolutely have to get done in your life before you die. Write them down. Okay, do that. Great. Now, pick the top 5 that literally cannot be left. They literally are life and death. Okay, fine. You've got those 5. Now just rub out, delete the other 20. And people look at you with horror. They go, "What? No, I can't delete the other 20. And they say, "Well, if you don't, you will fail to achieve the 5 and you will fail to achieve the 20. So that's how he operates, and it's very interesting. And I think it's the same with this. So in terms of consultants, and I know from my own practice as well, that you encounter the same challenges in the end user organizations. They're frustrated, they are overloaded very often, particularly middle managers and even higher level VPs. They're given so much data and they have to make so many decisions based on so much irrelevance. That's actually very, very hard to effectively manage. It's stressful. So we thought, well, look, we have to be able to visualize this. We have to be able to do the heavy lifting for people. We have to be able to continuously remind the subconscious, when you look at the dashboard, of what actually matters instead of all the minutiae. And so that psychology in mind, this platform has been built to simply create focus and execution. And without those two things, they're just, you're doomed to the same cycles. And consultants were finding the same problems, even in their own practices. We've got goals for our own practices, but we're so busy running around and doing this and trying to manage all these different clients and different demands. And we've got this big delivery coming up and et cetera, et cetera. And, how do I keep them truly accountable? How do I truly drive value in my clients? How do I truly demonstrate actually my value to my clients? Because we do hear this a lot as consultants. Well, yeah, no, you get the grumpy FD. ROI.
How do you,
always,
as consulting a lot of times is seen as a soft skill. And it's interesting because one of the issues as a consultant is, and in a hugely growing gig economy with the current pandemic and some people being furloughed and looking to move to consulting, a lot of consulting contracts are set up as time or project focused. So you're in, you're out. And the issue is there's always ongoing needs. So I think there's a shift. I know for myself and with companies I'm working with, that are in the consulting field, we're looking at, transformation as a service. So not an event. It's because you need, the assessment and that, because you have people that say, well, strategic planning. So you have the objectives and then you have your KPIs for a certain period, but then how do you coordinate and get, the buy-in and communication, the transparency from the bottom up and top down, and actually the action and execution of the planning and the objectives. I mean, we've all had big dreams and goals, and everyone wants great success and the things that can be done as a result of that, but very few people achieve the results that they want. And it's in that gap. And part of it is, you need resources, support, mentorship. And it's great that I see that in the tool that's goal management software. And the fact that, a frontline worker can see that their key results and objectives are tied to the CEO and the big picture. Now, we're held accountable at lower levels to, the organizational goals, but, in talking with leaders and CEOs, like getting the motivation when you aren't the person holding all the chips is tough.
That's huge. Yeah. Engagement is a massive issue. And so one of the psychological elements of this is engagement. We've set about to build, still building, creating, always creating the underlying psychology of a platform that would allow managers to know that both they and their teams are being engaged in this process. So we know from all multiple studies and, of course, millennia of experience, that if we know that we have a purpose and we're involved in something bigger than ourselves, and we can see why we matter, and we have a sense of camaraderie and team membership, then our engagement level simply elevates, enormously elevates.
Big time.
And huge. And so if we can visualize that, which I think we've been able to do, then the engagement level shoots up, because that's a massive problem. Retaining talent, huge problem.
Huge.
And so, yeah, so I was just going to say, if we can maintain that, and if we can gamify that environment slightly. So again, I'm looking at, the gamification, again, has been both well used and badly used, as with everything. And of course, people got distracted by the game. But gamification has to be about encouraging the behaviors that matter to the organization, not the game. So the game simply engages the limbic system of the brain and simply causes me to want to engage further. But it has to be encouraging the right behavior. So as long as we continue to build that into the platform, then that engagement level builds and builds. People see that their attainment update actually affected the CEO's own goals. Now that's huge, especially for this younger workforce, the millennial and Gen Z, or Gen Z as the Americans call it, workforce. They demand different things. They need to know. A and B players, they want to say, well, I need to be seen. I want to know why I'm here, how I fit in. I want to know how I can progress, and I want to know I'm seen. So this is huge for them. The C and the D players, well, they don't want that anyway. So this will weed them out.
Absolutely, the self-elimination. And I love, they're tied to the greater purpose of the organization, because now they see how they tie to the strategic goals, which are typically 3 to 5, objectives is fairly typical. Beyond that, you're diluting focus and attention. There's lots of research. You also brought up the purposeful goal striving. So the objectives, or the goals and objectives, especially to lower level team members, before the goal, right? Because this is what's imposed. They then have key results that are driving these, but they see the purpose. So it's purposeful goal striving, and it's that alignment you talked about before. And then on the other side of that is, as they're held accountable to the goals, and that there's this experience meaningfulness in this, as they're doing the things that they're being measured and contributing, they see their contribution as meaningful to the organization and the impact it has on clients they serve, but they then feel the impact themselves, which drives human behavior, because we are driven by emotion primarily. And if it's purpose and meaningfulness, those are the biggest, those are superchargers of performance, is what I call them. And literally in the HOP model, I talk about this. The gap is, you need that alignment, because we've all probably been in a situation as an employer, even in school, where you were asked to do something that was an objective or a goal, and your gut just tighten and you didn't feel right because there was that lack of alignment, or you started doing something or started a thing and you saw the people and what they were doing and the impact it had and the meaningfulness of it went up, and so does the motivation. So having a tool like goal management software that intuitively does that and then gives the, has the measurements that are in there, which a lot of those spreadsheets do, but you also bring in, you're looking to do stuff around predictive and prescriptive analytics.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yes.
A bit about that next phase, because that's a gap that a lot of the software, and I've looked at the competitors now in the marketplace as you have, and that's not something many, if any, are doing well.
Absolutely. I mean, we already have predictive analytics in our system. We're building right now a brand new business intelligence module, which is just off the charts. But the predictive analytics in there that just helps you to see where you're going to overshoot or undershoot, and therefore reallocate resourcing. That's huge. Prescriptive analytics. Now that's true machine learning. Now that is that's at a whole new level, and we've been looking at ML for some time, and not just analyzing, natural language, for example, which we can do fairly easily, but going beyond to a state where you can look at the results, the data that's coming in, and the ML engine can actually make recommendations on management behavior. So we're looking very intensively at that. That's a tough field, not for the faint of heart, but I think it's a must, and we will continue to push into that no man's land and create whatever we can to enhance the consultant's experience. Because ultimately consultants are saying to us, look, we're doing okay. We want to be able to demonstrate our ROI, so we're going to help them with benchmarking questionnaires and all that sort of stuff as well to show that ROI. But then to be able to say to their clients, look, not only have I got a white labeled product here that's really going to help you, executive team, but equally it's going to transform your management life. And so, this is, consultants are telling us every day of the week, if you can help us to help them like that, then that's what we want. So that's our obsession at the moment, is to create this, to make sure this is the consultant's choice, and make sure that this software helps consultants to manage their client interactions. So from their own bespoke dashboard, they can dive into any one of their clients' environments and interact with them, come back out to their dashboard, go into another client. They can draw, cross-client statistics for themselves. They can they'll be able to do all of this sort of this stuff. But the ML part of that is a critical element going down the road. And just frankly, even the basic stuff, the visualization of interconnectedness, the visualization and transparency, our views allow you to see that in front of your face. And
the psychology of motivation is embedded in the software.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. And, there's a lot in that. And I love that for consultants, this gives you an ongoing touch point and ability to support the organizations that consultants are working with, which, you aren't going from gig to gig, because then it looks like you're selling the next consulting contract. Now Absolutely. You have something ongoing that is ultimately for the clients we serve, that is tied directly to their long-term strategic objectives with the key results. And as someone that's about performance and loves the development of performance management programs, that's been the expertise. I can see how this does this beyond some of the HR-based platforms that are normal performance management that are not looking forward as much as they need to. I think there's an issue with performance management in that it's an assessment after the fact and then a discussion about how to change behaviors in the future to, improve, but it's based off of past versus looking forward. And, I sense there's going to be a paradigm shift moving forward. I love that you're working with consultants. Now, tell me, but are you limiting yourself in this focus? Because how big is this consultant market versus just going, to the end users?
Absolutely.
Broader market.
There's two issues there. One is, and you touched on it before, one is that actually limiting? That's just too small a market? It's not really going to cut the mustard. And secondly, what about engagement of the end user? What about adoption? What about implementation? Because that is a problem. Taking the first of those points, the management consulting market, there are different studies out there, but anywhere up to about, certainly in the next 4 years, that market's predicted to be anywhere above 340 billion US. Not million, billion. It's a big market. It is growing rapidly. I think with, the so-called pandemic that we have witnessed in 2020, that has dispersed workforces. It has broken up companies. It's destroyed balance sheets and P&L accounts, and it's basically creating some demand. And I see this coming, creating demand for really good consultant work to come in. There's going to be M&A work growing out of all this. There's going to be restructuring, cultural shifts and alignments, as people disperse to remote working practices. There's a huge need, I think, for the consulting space coming. And I think we're already beginning to see some of that. And so, I don't think this is limiting us at all. And to be frank with you, if it is limiting us, good. I don't want to talk to everybody. There are certain people who have certain problems. We believe we can solve those problems and solve them well. And so we're focused, ultra focused on getting that done. So even if my market's only, my available market is only 300 million annually, fine. I'm okay with that because we then become the go-to. And I would rather leave the legacy that I didn't just get big and have all my vanity metrics, but I actually provided quality, of course, with great commerciality, great returns for our shareholders, but still quality. We truly met the need. And people say, man alive, that company's just superb. We love them because they love us. And I love that. I just think that's where the essence of it is. Now, the second element of that, of course, is adoption. You alluded to the problems that end user companies, organizations have, not-for-profit as well as commercial ventures, and they just are tired. They're platform fatigued. They're struggling with, it's the classic case. Well, sorry, we're way too much in a hurry to change our flat tire, and there's this sort of mentality. We can't stop to change the tire. And so what we discovered very quickly is that with a platform like this that relies upon an ideological shift in the leadership of an organization, you need an accountability figure in that picture somewhere, whether it's in-house or whether it's an external consultant. Now, we could provide that consultancy ourselves, but that's not our core business. And so we think that, the experts who do this day in, day out should be providing that service for clients. So that's why we want to serve the consulting market with this product, so that they can then go in and actually help that implementation and adoption, help that culture to shift. That habituation of a new practice, even though it's small, takes minutes a week to update your attainment. But still people say, well, it's like moving from a Mac to a PC, or, people struggle with that difference. So they need that. So that's the other reason.
Well, I love it. And it's a great explanation, Phil. And what I like is it's counterintuitive to what most tech companies will do. So already in a world where differentiation is difficult, for everyone, and it's hyper competitive now in every field, and everyone runs the risk of commodification and becoming a commodity, doing things counterintuitively and differently will separate you. And anyone that wants to sit back and go, well, why would you miss out on limit yourself to 300 million versus 30 billion, go, really? Go, 300 million is still a big number.
Fairly big number. But yeah, we can get very swallowed up by vanity. I often say to young entrepreneurs, they say, I want to scale this. I want 200 employees by, 2023. And I go, do you? Do you honestly believe that doubling your workforce doubles your output? And they go, oh yeah, probably more. And I go, no, it does not. What it does is quadruple.
Entrepreneurs.
Oh my goodness. It just quadruples your overheads internally, your internal communication issues just from a start, let alone everything else. So, these vanity metrics are a real hindrance to some people's mentality. And thankfully I grew out of that some time ago. And we're going for sleek and truly need meeting.
Excellent. Well, and being niche is probably a strategic, smart thing to do. Now, you have 3 different companies here. You've got a lot going on. You have a young, active family. You're involved in volunteer work. So you're obviously a high-performing person. What are some of your success habits and things you do to keep yourself up in that performance zone consistently?
That's a great question. I think I've alluded to most of this already, I think, but the core essence for me is character. If you don't work on yourself, even Michael Jackson, bless his cotton socks, even he said it's the man in the mirror. And I think he's right. If you don't work on yourself first, put your own oxygen mask on first, don't think you can help the lady across the aisle, because you won't be able to. And I do think that's core to everything for me. Secondly, I think consistency is huge. So I rise early, just in case England is calling. And I'm consistent with that. If I say that I'm going to, even voluntary things, which I do. So, something I do every single week as a volunteer, right, is at the same time every week. And I'm there every week. If I cannot be there physically because I'm under a bus or I'm swinging upside down from a tree because my parachute jump went wrong or whatever it might be, then I make sure someone else is there to facilitate that. And so I think consistency is the essence of leadership as well, apart from character. So those 2 things I think build, and then persistency as well. I think if you, and it grieves me to see a couple of generations now who have been brought up to be incapable in many respects of being persistent. They are not resilient. They cannot deal with difference of opinion, conflict. They struggle with that. And it grieves me to see that lack of resilience.
The word entitled, there's an entitlement mentality that we see a lot of times. And
absolutely. And, we can all rail on the millennials. And, I don't think that necessarily we should do that, because I don't fundamentally
think it's limited to millennials, quite frankly.
No.
I think right now with the issues created by a pandemic like COVID, we're seeing, different government approaches to how to do this. And, you hear conversations from some people or organizations on what they feel they're entitled to in terms of support and that from others in the government. And it just, it boggles my mind. And
Absolutely.
These are people who definitely aren't, millennials.
Absolutely.
Every generation has their own, generalizations and pros and cons. And the reality is, everyone brings something to the table that's strong, but that whole entitlement piece I see. But so what I heard from you is character, consistency, and persistence.
Absolutely. I think if I was to boil it right down, maybe those would be the core things. And of course, then you have everything that flows from character, such as excellence, diligence, and integrity, and as I said earlier, love and actual compassion for people, instead of always trying to live in a fear-based state, which the world's governments and the media are currently training the world to live in. I refuse to live in that state. I simply will not live in a fear-based state. So people they become fearful about their market. They say, I'm going to destroy you, or I'll do whatever it takes to make sure you don't succeed. And I say, so in our London business, for example, in our real estate business, I actually offer training to my competitors for free, because the industry that we are sort of market leaders in, it is appalling. It's a mess. People are doing a bad job, and I don't like that. And the market's huge. I wouldn't want to service the entirety of that market. It's enormous. So this mindset of scarcity has to stop. So I think, that's a key thing for me, is not living in a fear-based, self-centered mentality in business, and actually paying forward, giving back, and realizing that somebody gave me a leg up, many years back. And do you know what? I am going to make sure I give someone else a leg up. There's no way I'm going to hold that to myself. So yeah, there's lots of things that flow out of those things, but I think those are the core.
And I love it, because that fear-based society that we see, and fear-based organizations, I would even add, it generates a reactive approach to life and business. And I'm sorry, if you're doing that, you're playing catch up, and you're always behind just by design. It's systematized. Whereas, not being trapped, and it's a trap, the fear trap, you then can be proactive, and you're coming from that character, consistency, persistence, and you're future focused. And
absolutely,
we're moving into the future. We aren't, by reacting to fear, we're literally looking at, the past and the current without, and there's going to be a lag. If you're dealing with that, by the time you're dealing with that, it's already changed, because you're into the future. So
that's right.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. We need to honor and look at it for intel and data, but really it has to be future focused, because that's where we're going. That's where we are and where we're going.
Absolutely. And that's why I think we should all be a student of history, for that reason, so that we can stand on giants' shoulders, but equally have negative role models that help us to avoid the landmines.
Absolutely. Great point. Well, Phil, we're past what I thought we would do in terms of time here, so I'm very conscious. One last question is the 100th birthday celebration. Who do you want at your 100th birthday celebration, and what, more importantly, what do you want them saying about you?
Probably, again, very much what I've already mentioned, but I want my family, I want my children at that 100th birthday celebration, and I want my grandchildren and great-grandchildren at that celebration. I believe that, and again, informed by my faith very strongly, I am required to leave a legacy. I think a good man, a righteous man, leaves an inheritance for his children and his children's children. Well, what is that inheritance? Is it a speedboat? Good heavens, grow up. No, it's not a speedboat. It's a heritage of character. It's a heritage of faith, actually. It goes way beyond some kind of basic religious observance where I'm trying to just be a nicer person and climb my way to some deity. No, this is a faith, I think, where the deity has come down to man. It's the complete inverse. And we gratefully receive that message and that love, and we pass that on to our generation. So I want them all there, and I want them to say, I think I'll go beyond that. I won't say I want them to say, I will say they will say, because I think here's a big secret that I've discovered the older I've got. You write your own eulogy. You write your own 100th birthday speeches. Don't think someone else is actually writing those. You can cop out and say, oh no, well, people will say whatever they say. But you decide ultimately by your behavior, your choices, and how much personal responsibility you choose to take in life, which again is another thing, a source of grief for me, that people are not being taught to take personal responsibility. But the more you take, the more you write that eulogy. So I know that they will say, because I intend this to be, that I was a man of authentic character. I did what I said, and I did what I promised, but I didn't even need to promise. I just said, yeah, I'll do that. And that was as good as a promise. It was as good as a legal contract. That's what I love. And I want them to say that he taught us excellence. He taught us diligence. He taught us to be resilient. He taught us to know our own mind. And he taught us to, above all, love and care for other people, whether they are our family, friends, people we meet in the mall, or our staff, our teams, and our clients that we serve. We need to care for humanity. So that is going to be said of me, because I will make sure that I live that way.
I love it. Well, and it's that future focus, and it's interesting because we're so aligned in many different ways. My epitaph is going to read, and you'll probably know where this quote comes from. I fought the good fight, which speaks to your character. Mm-hmm. I finished the race, which is that persistence. And I kept the faith. And that faith is, that belief in the unseen. That's what faith means. And if we're wanting to move into our potential, it's unseen. Our potential is not existing yet. There's a gap between where we're at and where we're headed. So you need to have faith and hope and optimism that can happen. And performance is really potential minus interference. So things like the fear and that are the things that zap the potential.
Yes.
Right? So being aware that those are more often than not distractions. And yes, we have to pay attention to distractions, but you don't dwell there. You don't stay and dwell, because at that point you have a choice. You can either spiral down and focus there, and it's like a toilet bowl, or you can spiral up. And I love that character, consistency and persistence. So you have to finish the race. That's that consistency. And persistence is keeping the faith. And, because there is going to be interference and distraction along the way. And, all the comments of what that meant, hugely insightful. And thank you so much for the time on here today, Phil. I'm looking forward to more conversations and getting to know you more. We have set a record in this podcast for the length, which when we talked before, we thought, we might be on the lower end. And because of who you are, and there was more discussion and that. So I thank you for that. I know how precious time is for you, so I want to thank you, and thank you, Hop Nation, for listening in. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you so much.